Hi, friends and family.
Welcome to Hope After Addiction
With your hosts, Katie Comer
and Chelsea McLeod.
Hi, welcome to Hope After Addiction. We're so happy that you've joined us today. Hi, Chelsea.
Hi, friend. How are you?
I'm good. I'm doing really good. I'm it's the beautiful weather outside. As I'm driving in, I was just thinking about, I just need to roll my windows down. This is the perfect weather. It's the beginning of summer for us. I don't know when you're watching this, but so it's just like beautiful.
Yeah.
So good.
So good.
Anything new with you?
No, I don't think so. We're doing swim lessons with Jasper this week, which is fun. His first. Yeah.
Are you kidding me? That's so cute.
He's a little
Is it
water
like
baby.
a mommy and me one where you hold him, or is he like go on?
He she said whatever works best for him.
Okay.
So John got in the pool with him yesterday. Today he was not going to. I may tomorrow, but we'll see.
Oh my
It's
goodness.
fun.
That's so fun.
Sweetness.
I remember all that. Yes. We today we're talking about the importance of community. And I think this is valuable stuff, whether or not you've walked through addiction with a loved one. There's just some really good value in finding community around you. And one thing we were talking about right before we started was we wanted to make mention of a big community opportunity that we were a part of. Is our first Hope After Addiction family night. I know.
It was so sweet.
It really was.
So
We didn't really know what to expect. We had been, promoting it. Our partner ministry is S2L Recovery. If you don't know that, you can look them up. It's an all men's facility. And so we have a lot of moms and wives and girlfriends that are dealing with a loved one in recovery. And so we open that up, and it's for guys too.
Yeah,
so dads
anybody.
can come, whatever, but it typically is a lot of women that we deal with. And so we didn't know what to expect. We're like, we might have two.
Yeah.
It might just be us looking at each
right.
other. We still need some community too.
Yeah,
But
either way. And it was sweet because we don't get to meet a lot of our girls face to face. Like, because it's podcast, it's phone.
yeah.
So to actually sit in a room and fellowship and pour into each other was so sweet.
Yeah.
I was fired up.
Yeah. And this all different phases. We had some that were in the beginning phase, like they had just gotten there. We had some that had been there for several months because they're in phase 2. You had us that had been out for a while. So it's really good to kind of just tell our stories of where we're at in our journey, because it's still a journey, even for us, and just talking about it. And they've been listening to the podcast, which is kind of fun that they've gotten some stuff out of it. So if you're listening and you are local, we're in the Murfreesboro, Tennessee area. So anywhere around that, we're going to have our next one. When is it?
June 22nd.
June 22nd.
A Thursday night. So we'll do it before Catapult because a lot of our listeners and family go to Catapult with their loved ones.
Which is a midweek refresher.
Yeah, it's so good for anybody.
Anybody.
But yeah, so we do it before. That way we close out around 7, and then you can walk on over to Catapult and worship and hang out with your loved one.
We'd love for you to join us.
Yeah,
so if you're listening, come on. But saying that, there's a sense of community that we felt was missing, right? And so we wanted to kind of bring everybody together. And there is importance in community. And that's why we wanted to talk today on the podcast about why is it important, and why was it important to us, and why is it still important to us to be in that community? What do you have first that really stuck out to you when you were preparing?
Well, I think for me, and I know Katie's talked about this too, community was very hard for me in the beginning because we were so hidden about it and didn't want to talk about it, which led to isolation and loneliness and just the enemy wreaking havoc on my thoughts. And I wasn't able to walk into healing because I didn't have people beside me speaking wisdom and truth and pouring into me, and understanding that I wasn't alone. And I started with Al-Anon, and I went very regularly. And I just remember sitting in that room, and I shared in our meeting the other night that one of the ladies shared her story, and I just sobbed.
Yeah.
Because for the first time, I was like, I'm not alone. Somebody understands where we're at in this season and what it feels like to love them and walk through this with them. And so we've learned through the years of this is community is imperative.
Yeah.
Like we can, and even here, we don't have family here, and our family is our people here are our family. I call them family because they're family and friends. Like you guys, like y'all have walked us through. And even I pulled up to the meeting the other night and had two of my really, really, really close friends in the parking lot. And I teared up and I was like, what are y'all doing here? And they're like, do you think we could miss your first night? And I was like, are you,
That's
it
so
just,
sweet.
and I
They're
told
so
them, I said,
sweet.
it meant so much because y'all have walked this journey with us. Y'all know when I'm having a tough day, I can run to you, run to Jesus first, but I can also run for wisdom, and they speak life into me.
Yeah.
So it's powerful.
Yeah. I agree. That's where we were too, or I was. I was very secretive, and I feel like that is kind of a common theme.
Yes.
Because you feel like there's so much shame, and you don't want others to know that you're not, you don't have it all together. Right. So, we're good. We were newly married. Yeah. Everything's supposed to be happy. And so it wasn't behind the scenes. And that, I think with social media, there's a lot of comparison game. And even back then when it wasn't super popular, it was still around. And so I do feel like there was a facade, like everything had to be good.
Yeah.
And so when I kind of found out that things weren't so good, I definitely hid what was really going on. And so nobody knew the struggle that Adam and I were having. And so it was just such a lonely place. It was, it was just so sad, and I know that there's people out there, even you watching, like you find some sort of community, even just listening to the podcast because you're like, I'm in that place.
Yes.
Like I'm the only people that know about this are me and my loved one. And I find some sense of comfort, even just listening to you. But we're telling you, there's so much more to community. I'm glad you listened to us, but open your world to what community can really do in your life.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
true.
Because I didn't have it for a while.
No. And I think that's mine and Katie's heart for this is because we both endured an incredible season of loneliness that was daunting and it was just hard. And so that is the draw for Katie and I to pour into you guys and to let you know that you aren't alone like we felt.
Yeah. I think that also outside of just you not feeling lonely, like I think that's obviously the one you first think of.
Yeah.
Oh, so I'm not alone. So I have community around me. But it's also accountability. It created an accountability for me. Even though I wasn't the one struggling with addiction, they were kind of able to keep me on check if I was focusing too much on that person.
Yes.
They were able to really kind of come around me and hold me accountable to steering me towards Christ and not towards my loved one. Holding me accountable to have fun, taking me out, you know what I mean? Let's go out to dinner and getting my mind off of things.
Yes.
That's holding me accountable to what I needed to be doing and focusing on me and focusing on Christ and what really needed to happen. And without that community, I would just been stuck at home just like thinking about things.
It's such a good point.
Yeah.
And I always say an idle mind is the devil's playground. And if we're at home in that isolation, in that loneliness, we're constantly speaking to ourselves. We're not worthy. We're not loved. Did I cause this? So having those people to reiterate like, hey, let's go get dinner, or like, let's go walk at the park, or don't forget. And I always say, as my grandmother says, like, take your IV out of John, put it back into God, because I would get so focused on John. And she was like, put your focus back on God.
Yeah.
Trust that he's going to do this.
That's the community that you needed.
Yeah. That's that wisdom. That's that life-giving truth that community does give you. And one thing we've talked about before, but choose your people wisely. I'm an introvert, so I am absolutely quality over quantity. I would rather have 3 good friends than 15 acquaintances. And so I know we had to really choose our people that would speak life and would speak wisdom. And, one of my best friends now, I can still call her anytime, even if it's about marriage or something, and she will return my mind and be like, hey, why don't you look at it this way? Or let's pray for him right now. Or, let's look at it this way. And it's just amazing when you have that community. Choose wisely. You'll learn what people you probably need to let go in this season and what people you can run to that'll speak truth and wisdom in that.
Yeah, and not that they're bad people if you have to let them go in this season.
Nope.
I like how you kind of mentioned that in the season.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it's just such a fragile season for you.
Good word.
And it's not, doesn't mean that they're bad. It just might not be what you need in this moment. So picking wisely, maybe write them down. I don't know. I felt like that was kind of like, okay, this is not my friend. This is my friend. But I mean, kind of.
Well, and it's true. And I was even reading about this yesterday. When you go through hard times, you find out who your true friends are. But I'll say for Katie and I, infertility, I had a whole separate group of accountability and wisdom than I necessarily did for addiction, because some people understood infertility, some people understood addiction. Yeah. And that's the people that you feel safe with, that understand. What Luckily, you were both of my people for that.
Yeah, I know.
But it's huge.
Yeah, it's true. I definitely think being picky for sure is something wise to really think about.
Yeah, because fragile is a good word for this season. And you have to be careful what's poured in, what you pour out. It's it's a sweet season, but it's a fragile one.
But it's fragile.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was another thing just on that, but the verse in Proverbs 27:17 that talks about iron sharpening iron.
Yeah.
And find those people, because right now you need sharpening. You need pouring into, you need that person that's going to lift you up. And always say, like, there's those people, when you feel like you're down in a hole, and there's those people that'll sit at the top of the hole and be like, hey, do you need anything? And it's like, find that one that's going to jump down in that hole with you and sit beside you and be like, what can I do? Yeah. How can I help you? Where can I meet you? Like, find that person that sits in that hole with you.
Yeah. It reminds me of when you say hi to somebody and you're like, how you doing? And you don't really and it's a good reminder for how you need to be. Yeah. But I've tried to be intentional when I say, hey, how are you doing? But like, how are you really doing?
I think you're really good at that.
You know, but like, how are you really doing? You can sense you're like, something's off.
Yes.
I try to be better about that. Yeah. Instead of just like, how you doing? Okay, good.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, John and my cousin, somebody will say, well, how are you? Good. And they'll look and say, well, what does good look like? Oh. And I'm like, I love that, because it gives them an opportunity, because they don't want to sit there and pour it all out unless they know that you're going to sit there and listen.
Yeah. And then sit there and listen,
that you care.
And have that time to do that. Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's just in passing, and that has to be the way, and it's just like a cordial thing. Yeah. But I just know, you have this sense, this discernment that people are going through stuff sometimes. You're like, but like, how are you really doing? Yeah. Like, how's your week going? You know, so just being intentional, being community for somebody, and not just the community that you need, I think is important too.
That is,
you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, I think if you're in the fragile state, you might not be able to be the community for somebody, and recognizing that in yourself. Yeah. So if you're listening, you might be in the fragile state, right? But, you at some point, being the community for somebody is super important.
Yeah. And that's why we have our stories.
Yeah.
And that was, I had read a quote. It says, we may have all come on different boats, but we are all in the same ship now. And I thought, and that was Martin Luther King. I loved it. And I thought about our meeting the other night, and I told the girls, because we went around and we all shared why we were there, what we were coming for. And it was such a sweet time. And every story was so different in that room. But I reminded the girls that night, I was like, somebody needs your story. Somebody is going to come to you one day and need exactly what you have, and the wisdom that you've gained, the strength. And that's why I always say, be the person you needed.
I just love that so much. Yeah. It was sweet to be able to hear, because I was that girl.
Me too.
Just them starting up and say, I might cry.
Yep.
Like, I know.
That's okay.
Yeah. And like feeling like, no, but like, we were you years ago, but it comes back, and you remember that. And like, you can get to the place that Chelsea and I are, and so by God's grace,
We couldn't have done it without God
Yeah.
and without community. And even for our loved one.
Yeah.
I know that's a huge part of John's walk is community. Like we would not be where we are without community.
Yeah.
Which S2L teaches, that community is imperative to this walk. Like we can't do it alone.
Yeah. And honestly, I know it's hard for some people to do this, but completely changing your community from what the old community was.
It's a big one for us.
So we moved. We had great friends.
Right.
We did. We had great friends where we lived. That would have been great for Adam. But it would have brought back a lot of like emotions for him.
Yeah.
And I think God knew that. And even still being super close to the people that weren't great influences, you have that,
Yeah.
And so, or temptation, I guess is the word, but completely moving 4 hours away, having to create a new community.
Yeah.
And I think I've even shared this story before. I think I have. I can't remember. I've told it so many times, but our first like step into community when we were here. Do you remember?
I do. But
I'll tell it again. I'll tell it again
yeah.
because it's just so funny. It's in one of the podcasts that we talked about, but stepping into community here in Smyrna is where we live. And we were invited to a small group. So we were a little bit late. So Adam was like, I just think we need to come back a different day. I was like, we're going. We need to make friends. I was like, it can't just be us staring at each other all the time. And so I knew that there was an importance in community. And he did too. But he was just like, I don't want to be late to this group. And so we walk into this small group. And there's probably 5 or 6 other couples there. And they're all sitting around, and we walk in and we sit down, and they're all like, hi, how are you? And all that stuff, like the cordial stuff.
The surface level.
Yeah, the surface level stuff. And so one of our friends said, all right, let's go around introducing everybody. And they, like you said, just surface level, like, I work in this, and I work at Nissan. I work at this person. And we have 2 kids. It gets to Adam and I. And Adam goes, well, I'm sorry, there's a fly. Adam goes, well, I just got out of rehab and did a stint of like so many days, and my wife and I had separated, but we moved back in together. And, this whole big thing of like all this drugs he was on and all this stuff. And he was like, but by God's grace, I got saved, and now I'm in ministry. And when he was done, it was probably like 5 minutes. They were all like, it was so awesome. And Peyton, our friend, now he's like one of our best friends. He was the leader of it. He goes, that's what I'm talking about. That is vulnerability. That's being open. That is community. This is what we need is for you to open up. And then after we went, like everybody else went, of like where they really were in life. And it opened up a whole new level of community.
Yeah.
Just because we were open.
Yes.
Yeah. And so now those people in that group, there's several couples in that group. This was like over 10 years ago. They're still some of our best friends today. Yeah. I actually went to the beach with a couple of the girls. Yeah. So it was just really funny. So that's just a little story of community, our first community back here when we moved here. So
and it's so
starting
good.
over.
And it's fun as you walk to get super awkward. Like John and I will be in those settings and we just jump to awkward real quick and deep,
I mean, hey, this is us.
That's right.
And we hadn't told our story too much up until then, but Adam had.
Yeah.
Because he had been in the program. He was used to telling his story. And I was just like, okay, here we go.
I know, it makes us a little nervous.
No, I mean, I'm so used to telling it.
Yeah.
And people know who we are.
Yeah.
So they're not even fazed by it. But
No.
it was funny back then. I was like, oh, well, here we go. Yeah.
Yep. Well, and that goes back to just reminding me, and I have it written down, but how the enemy wants to isolate you. He wants to make you feel alone. He wants to make you doubt telling your story. We did that. We were in Ecuador one year with the whole team. I knew one of the ladies. And so she asked, she's like, well, y'all share your testimony. So we're sitting there, same as Adam. I mean, John is pouring it out. And I'm like, we're on a mission trip. These people are going to so judge. And the whole time, the enemy was just constantly like, you're going to be judged for this. You should feel shame. You should, the breakthrough that came in that room.
Yeah.
The people that came to us afterwards that were like, hey, I've been struggling with this. Or, I mean, it sets a fire underneath. And it is so cool because the enemy, he wants to come and steal, kill, and destroy.
Yeah.
And if you isolate, if you don't allow yourself to share your story and to use God's glory, he's going to keep you right where you are.
Being vulnerable within your community is super important. So
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It helps, having community. I kind of even just glanced at some in my notes. It helps. A lot of people struggle with enabling their loved one because they're so hyper focused on their loved one.
Yeah.
I do believe that community helps you through the process of enabling.
That's so good.
You know, so if you're really struggling and you recognize that about yourself, I would really look at the community that's around you and even asking your community, your friends, your family, saying, hey, I'm really struggling with focusing on myself and focusing on Jesus. I'm like consumed with the thoughts of if they're going to be healed or, you know, all this stuff, if they're going to find Jesus through this, I would really search your community and just be vulnerable with them and say, this is where I'm struggling.
Yeah.
Help me focus back on where it matters.
And it's so good. And
Yeah.
I still remember words spoken from 6 years ago.
Yeah.
From sitting in a meeting or a friend that poured, like, I remember those words like they spoke them yesterday.
Yeah.
And so community, I mean, it will change your trajectory of your life. It will strength build in you. It is so important.
Super important.
Like, I don't think we can reiterate that enough, how important that is.
Find your community.
Find your community.
Got anything else?
I think that's it.
Okay. Well, we hope that you felt encouraged. And if you want some more encouragement and you are local, again, like we said, we are having our next Hope After Addiction Family Night, June 22nd. We'll make sure we put all the details up for you when we share this podcast so that you kind of know what's going on. If you want some information of when we do Hope After Addiction Family Nights, you can follow us on our social medias, Facebook, Instagram, Hope After Addiction. You can find us on there. We'll make sure to post some of that stuff on there. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe. Give us a comment. This is where we get some of our material. We actually got one of our topics that we're going to be talking about from the family night. So something that this girl was struggling with. We were like jotting it down.
We're like,
we got to talk about this. So, So we hope you enjoyed this podcast, and we hope that you have a fantastic week.